Hello, this video will provide an administrative overview of how to manage widgets in OCMed's Elite field. There are some significant changes to these widgets with the new 3.5 data standard, specifically with crew member level and primary role of the unit, or what is called in 3.5 type of unit. First, let's look at Elite field. On the left-hand side, we're able to set up our shift so that several core elements will auto-populate when we open a run form. Each element here is considered to be a widget. Here, we are looking at a test agency that is still in the O3.4 data standard. When we set up our crew, their level will auto-populate from how their profile is set up in Elite. If their agency licensure level has been set up, it will auto-populate here as we see with the EMT value. Opening an old 3.4 run form, we can see how this data will auto-populate. And if you choose to add an additional crew member that was not set up in the widget, their level will auto-populate also, if it was included in their user profile. This functionality is the same in the new 3.5 system. However, as you may have noticed in testing, the underlying values for crew member level have changed in the 3.5 standard. If we open up a 3.5 run form, we will see validation rules firing to alert us to this issue. This is for situational awareness only, as we have been able to resolve this issue with some coding under the surface. The old values will now be acceptable when auto-populated. However, just in case, we will leave the text warning above the element to provide your crews with instruction on what to do if the validation rule does fire. Simply open up the value list and select from the available options. Note that even when you select the new 3.5 run form in your form manager to be the default for your agency, the widgets will still be in the 3.4 standard until your agency as a whole is defaulted to 3.5. OCEMS must switch your agency as a whole to the 3.5 default. Let's look now at the administrative side of Elite. At your direction, OCEMS will default your agency as a whole to 3.5. This should be done at your agency's discretion and likely at the time when the majority of your field crews will move to using the new 3.5 run form. The most obvious implication is that this controls the versions of the widgets that are available in Elite field. As a tangential overview of some areas affected by the 3.4 to 3.5 change, run forms and validation rules have a switch within those areas to flip back and forth from the 3.4 to 3.5 no matter what default setting your agency is. Print reports and report writer provide access to 3.5 while defaulted to 3.4 and vice versa through specific element names such as eDisposition 12 in 3.4 is IT Disposition 112 in 3.5. However, for other areas, the default limits what elements and values are available. Looking quickly at some user information in 3.4, we see that this test user is set up as an EMT. If we look at the same profile in 3.5, we can see that the values have been modified. They still represent the old, now non-compliant values and are unavailable for new personnel. However, you do not need to modify your existing users. Let's look now at vehicles to see an area that will require modification. In the old 3.4 standard, there were two required elements, one for primary role of this unit and one for level of care of this unit. Level of care is being removed and combined with primary role, which we will now call type of unit. You can see in this drop-down value list that the types of apparatus non-transport versus ground ambulance, etc. have been combined with the level, ALS, BLS, PAU, etc. We will not modify this element right now to provide for examples of what Elite field will look like before we make this change. Now we are in a 3.5 run form in our test agency that is still defaulted to the old 3.4 data standard. The value for type of unit has been significantly modified in the new 3.5 data standard, from primary role of this unit to type of unit. We can see that the values here are going to auto-populate with the old values and will be flagged to signal that they must be corrected. Here, crews are required to delete the value, open the new value list, and select the appropriate option. Now let's clear this run form out and see what the widget looks like. Again, we are still in an agency that is defaulted to 3.4. When we select a unit, the widget, which is still in 3.4 format, will auto-populate with the settings provided for this vehicle. We have a ground ambulance that's BLS. And just to highlight, when we open a 3.5 run form, these values will be problematic. Again, flagged to indicate the error with the label above to provide instructions to field crews should they forget what to do. The fix here requires 3 actions. The first is letting OCEMS know when you would like to default your agency as a whole to the 3.5 data standard. We've already done that in one of our test agencies as shown earlier in this video. This step is most likely in coordination with your field go live date so that the widgets will be consistent with the default run form. Once we have defaulted your agency to 3.5, your crews will have access to the updated widgets in Elite Field. Let's take a look at that. As a reminder, we'll go through the sync process for Elite Field. The agency that we're in right now is actually the agency where we made this change to the default for 3.5 earlier in the video, and we will now sync all resources in order to obtain that new setting. Okay, now when we go into our crew, we see that level has been removed. We don't have a level. We could add that in now. However, we'll leave it blank for an example, as well as the unit. Primary role of unit is now blank, but let's leave that alone for now. If we open up a 3.5 run form, we'll see that we still have a problem to resolve. Here you can see that the old value was still underlying even though you could not see it in the widget, and it is carried over into the run form. Step 2 will be modifying the values in Elite in the vehicle manager. However, until you get through that step with all of your vehicles, you may want to alert your crews that they will have to change this value in the run form dynamically. Or they may modify it in the widget, and that will carry over into their run forms. For step 2, we will return to Elite Manager. We are back in the Vehicle Information panel. To review, that is located in Resources, Vehicles and Calls. We will select the vehicle we want to modify. And we will notice that primary role of this unit, the labeling is still the same even though the element has changed to type of unit. But this is where we want to focus, and it's blank. However, don't be fooled. The old value, the old non-compliant value, is still there underneath the surface. If we are to leave this blank, it will still show up auto-populating in our run forms and creating a problem. Open up the value list and select the correct value and save. If we wanted to leave this blank because we don't feel that we can hard code the level of this particular unit, we would save a real value in, any value. Here we have saved BLS ground ambulance. That has removed the old non-compliant value, and if we want to, now we can save it as blank. And that would provide us with the dynamic where the field crew would need to set it up in the widget or define it on each call. In this case, we are going to default it to the BLS ground ambulance, and we are also going to remove level of care of this unit since that is no longer required in the new data standard. Our third step would be to control the widgets themselves. That is located in Elite Field Configuration, Elite Field Dashboard Widgets. We'll look for Level of Care of Unit. Note that you may continue to use this element if you wish, but it is no longer part of the required data standard. We will hide it. Okay, now let's look back at Elite Field one last time to see what it looks like with all the modifications. Let's look at Unit. It now shows that it's a BLS ground ambulance unit. And when we open up a new run form, it should be auto-populated. And if something happens and a non-compliant value makes it into a run form, we know what to do. And that wraps up this video on how to manage widgets in the 3.5 implementation. Thank you for your time and attention.